welcome everybody to our event today. I'd like to thank all our elected officials that are here, including Mayor Maldonado, Judge Velasquez, Mr. Velasquez from the school district, and to introduce our guest speaker will be George Silva.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing today?
Good, and you?
I cannot hear you. How are you guys doing today? This is one of the coolest parts about my job. My name is George Silva. I'm the Santa Cruz County Attorney. And usually what I get to do is, when people violate the law, we hold them accountable. And we make sure that there are consequences to their behavior. So it's really cool to come out here and see the future of our community, the future of our country, and see all the smiling faces. One of the things that we learned from COVID is, we weren't able to see people smile, so this is cool to now be able to see people smile. Okay? So, when do we ever have a track and football superstar in our community? Never, right? Unless you're working on getting there at high school and doing the things that you need to do to get there. But we never have a track and a football star in our community. And today we have a track star that went to school here in Tucson, Choya High School. Did track and played football. Then went to the University of Arizona, the Wildcats. I have my little blue tie, it has little red polka dots, and I wore it in your honor. I'm an ASU fan. But I went to law school at the U of A, so we're good. But, like I said, when do we ever get this opportunity, right? So he played at the U of A, he played football. And during the same time, he was also long jumping and track. And he was able to go to the Pan American Games and win a gold medal, long jumping. He was the NCAA championship, long jumper. Then after the U of A, Denver Broncos. You guys know the Denver Broncos, right? You know John Elway, right? This gentleman caught passes from John Elway and scored touchdowns. He went to 3 Super Bowls. Pretty impressive. Okay? So please help me give a warm welcome to one of the 3 amigos, Vance Johnson.
Hello guys and gals. It's really an honor to be here, guys, honestly. And I had a chance years ago to speak to a number of young kids like yourselves on the other side of the country. And the very promise I made God was I wanted to just come back and share the hope here in Arizona, and especially with all of you, so you guys can know that everything you've ever had to go through in your life was all for a purpose. And some of us, and even you at your age, struggle with things. Would you guys agree with that? Sometimes you struggle with stuff? Because now I get to get into my testimony, because he had a chance to share with you about this famous ball player and how I was one of the best athletes in U of A and actually in the country for America, even winning the gold medal, and I'll get into that part of my testimony too. But first I'll start out where I was born at. So I'm originally from the East Coast, New Jersey. In fact, before I even get into that, I'll tell you that I just got back to Arizona last year after 33 years. And the reason why I came back to Arizona was I work in the field where I get people into treatment all over the country, no matter where they are. And there was a program in Arizona called America's Rehab Campuses. In fact, if you can show that first photo, I don't know if you guys will be able to see it. Yes, can't see it. I'm sorry to see it. So I work there and get people into treatment all the time. I do interventions. If someone has a loved one or a family member or even a teenager that's struggling with addictions, I'm willing to do that intervention for them. And I even actually did the show Intervention on A&E, where there's been over 1 million views, where I did an intervention on a young lady that was struggling with her addictions. And this is why I'm so transparent, because I had promised myself, like when I was your age, I was never never going to smoke. I was never going to drink alcohol. I was never going to do drugs. This is the very promise I made God when I was a kid. But wait until you see where that went. So I'm originally from New Jersey. My father actually was born in New Jersey. And my dad, his dad, actually ended up being killed when my father was 6 years old. So my father grew up without a father. And growing up without a father sometimes can be really tough. And even many kids today don't have dads in their lives. And that's the reason why when I get into my testimony, I'm going to share with you how I ended up being that dad that ended up abandoning my own kids. As time went on, my father didn't finish junior high school, he didn't finish high school, and my dad started to join the gang. And this gang was not only selling drugs, using drugs, breaking into people's houses, and the other thing they started to do was kill each other. They literally were murdering each other. And they were also murdering other people around that state of New Jersey. And after a while, with my dad, now from the age of 6 years old, now he's 19 years old, he was forced to go to court because he was facing jail time because he was a part of this gang that were murdering each other. And they told him, young man, if you join the service, then you won't have to go to prison. And so my father was stationed out here in Arizona for the service. So he came all the way from the East Coast out here. Now, when my dad got here, he's 20 years old. Now, well, I'm sorry, 19, almost 20 years old. And after he turned 20 years old, he was allowed to go off-site, being a part of the Army here in America. And he went to a concert where he saw a young lady sitting inside of a car, and she was only 15 years old. And he knocked on the window, and back then you couldn't push a button. Today you can just push the button. Back then you had to roll it down like this. And he introduced himself and says, "Hi, my name is Eugene." And she says, "My name's Gene." So you got Gene and Gene talking. So my dad says, "Why aren't you inside the concert?" And she says, "Well, I'm only 15 and they're selling alcohol and they won't let me go in because I'm a minor." And so my dad decided to stay out there and talk to that 15-year-old girl. And so, any 15-year-old girls in here? There's one. Guess what I always say when I talk to the high school girls that are 15? Don't you talk to the 20-year-old boys. And I'll tell you the reason why. Guess what ended up inside of her belly? I did. So my mom got pregnant when she was 15 years old. I was in her belly. Now my dad signed an agreement because he had to marry a minor. But he didn't have to go out to Vietnam because they were going to have war out there. So he had to marry this kid. And he took her back to New Jersey, and that's how I came about being born in New Jersey. So when we got back out to New Jersey, my father went back to his old ways and became a part of the gang and everything again. And so he actually got my mother pretty upset. So my mom, now only a little over 16 years old, decided to bring me back here to Tucson, Arizona. So my dad comes back to Tucson and picks us both up and takes us back to Jersey. And then my sister was born. So then it got to the point where my mother was so tired of being around that atmosphere of all the drugs, the alcohol, and the domestic violence and the things that was happening. She said, "Listen, if you want to be in me and these kids' lives, we got to go back out to Arizona." And my dad said, "I love my family, so I'm going to come back to Tucson with you guys." And that's how I ended up growing up in Tucson, Arizona. And now I'm about 5 years old when I get out here. And my father now, though, there's a saying, guys, you can take the brother out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out of the brother. So my father hits the streets out here in Arizona too. And the other thing he starts to do is be really abusive to my mother. And when you're a kid and you see a father that's being abusive to your mom and punching her in the face and going out and getting drunk and doing alcohol and all these different things, and you tell yourself as a young kid, a young man especially, I'm not going to be like my dad when I grow up. And that's exactly what I said to myself. I'm not going to be like him, because a man is not supposed to beat up his wife, and a man is not supposed to be some alcoholic and a drug addict doing the things that he's doing. And I even got to the point in kids where I started having these suicidal thoughts because I didn't have a life that was happy, because my dad was always mean to my mother. And my mother was a very wonderful mom. She was godly, she always went to church, she was actually part of the Sunday school, but every time we went home, I didn't see the same thing happen in the house that I saw inside the church. And I even got to the point where I was your age and I was suicidal. I had promised myself when I was your age that I was going to go up on Mount Limit and I was going to jump off a cliff and I was going to kill myself. So it got to the point where I was so tired of being around my father, this was before I became an athlete, that I decided to just run away from home. And I ended up homeless downtown Tucson, Arizona for a number of days. In fact, it was even longer than that. And it got to the point where my mother and father started looking for me, and one day they drove off the highway, and my dad saw me downtown Tucson, Arizona, downtown. And my dad pulls up and says, "Son, we've been looking all over for you. Are you hungry?" And I said, "Dad, I'm starving." And And guess what my dad says to me? Well, you know where you live at. And he drove home. And so I literally had to walk back like 9 miles back to, in fact, 11 miles back to our house. So this is how I struggled as a kid. I want to show you guys where this is going. And I promised myself I was not going to be like my dad when I grew up. Now, there is one thing that I started to do, and I'm going to ask you young men not to do this, because there was a magazine inside of my dad's closet called Hustler, and there was a whole bunch of naked ladies on that magazine, and so I would go into his room every single day after I got out of school and look at naked girls. And we're not supposed to do that as young men. And this is all biblical, guys, because it tells us that we're supposed to grow up and marry that woman that we fall in love with, not be looking at all these different naked people. My dad even had videos where I would watch the videos every single day. So even though I told myself I wasn't going to be like my father, to me I was actually worse than him, starting off looking at all these different things, having sex inside of my mind, because you're not supposed to have sex unless you're married. And I didn't know that because my dad didn't raise me that way. As time went on, my father actually ended up making me play sports. So I played basketball, football, baseball, soccer. I did all different types of sports. And that was the only time that I had fun, is when I was watching different athletes on television, all these famous athletes, and I was saying, you know what, I'm going to be famous one day. And I promised myself that I was going to be a pro football player, and I was going to run track, and I was going to be one of the best in the world. And the only good thing I will say about my dad is this. My dad told me every single day I came home from school that you can't come inside the house until you run for 40 minutes every day. So I would encourage you young men that are athletes, that every single day that you need to run for between 20 and 40 minutes every single day, because it's going to make you a better athlete. You don't just want to go run at the practice field with your teammates, but what you do behind the scene actually is going to make you a better athlete than them. The other thing I will tell you to do is this. Listen to your teachers and listen to your coaches. Because I actually got to the point where not only junior high school, but high school, I started calling my coach Dad, because he was telling me what to do. Now, my father was abusive. He spanked me and cussed me out. But my coach would just tell me what to do and told me, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then you're going to get kicked off the team. And so I obeyed my coach. As time went on, I'm gonna fast forward now, I'm one of the best track athletes here in Tucson, Arizona. And I ended up, just like you said, representing the United States of America at the Pan American Games. And I literally won the long jump gold medal for the United States of America. They had flown us down to Caracas, Venezuela. And when we came back home, I just really wanted to stay involved in my sports, and told myself that I was not going to be a mean husband. I was not going to do drugs and alcohol. I wasn't going to smoke no weed. I was not going to do any of those things. I promised myself this. And you'll see how I kept my promise until where it went to at the end. As time went on now, here I am, a freshman in high school. I'm one of the best track athletes there. I'm gonna fast forward down to my last year in high school. I decided I was gonna go to college, because after trying to kill my father a couple times, where I would come home and I would beat him up and throw him on the ground, and I'd throw rocks at his head, because I was so sick of him beating my mother up, because she would always have bloody noses and everything. And I just told myself I hated him so much that I was gonna kill him. And this is what was happening behind the scenes, guys. What you guys saw, in fact, I don't know if you can show one of the highlights so I can prove who I am. Can you play that highlight, if you can pull that up? It's so hard to see things up there, isn't it?
Denver has acquired this pick from Houston and has selected Vance Johnson, wide receiver in Arizona.
It's very rare that you see a wide receiver with the rare speed, the 4.4 speed you had mentioned, 4.28, which was accurate, by the way. So I think Vance Johnson will fit in very well with Denver. It's a position they needed to fill.
Vance Johnson, what a catch! Winder is in and Elway Rose to the right.
The second-round draft pick quickly made an impact, using his greatest asset to become one of John Elway's top targets. The ability to elude defenders and his quick-witted persona helped Johnson win the hearts of Denver fans.
So normally I have to show those highlight films, because sometimes when I was your age, guys, this is the honest to God truth. When I was your age, if I saw someone speaking and they didn't show me highlights of them, then I didn't believe anything that they were saying. And that's the reason why I always try to show the highlight films of me in my NFL career. So I'll fast forward now. Now I'm going to go to college, and I decided to stay and go to the University of Arizona, because at first I was going to go to ASU, and then I was even thinking about going to California. But I decided to stay home because, just like I told you guys when I was young, your age, I was going to come back home and kill my dad. So I played football at the U of A. I had not smoked any weed, I had not drank any alcohol, I had not done any of those things. So how old are you when you're a freshman in college, guys? Anybody know?
1918.
About 18 to 19 years old? Yeah, about 18 to 19 years old. And what I did do though is I fell in love with my girlfriend that I fell in love with who was a senior in high school. And so I decided to, on her graduation, we decided to make love because I wanted to marry her, but she got pregnant. I just gotta be honest with you guys. And so her dad said, young man, I need you to get a job. So you young men, you listen to this. If you ever get a young lady pregnant, you better get a job. You better take care of your wife and your child. But you know what I did? I left her because I wanted to play football and be famous. And so I wasn't in my kid's life. And I cheated on her with another girl and had another child with her. So this is how bad I was, guys. I just have to be really honest with you guys. I hope you don't get up and run out of here when this is my story. So I'm playing football, running track. My first year at the University of Arizona, I get a chance to go to the NCAA championships. And I go jump against the #1 long jumper in the world by the name of Carl Lewis. And the night before the finals, I didn't qualify. I was placed number 14. They only took 13 place athletes to the finals. And so the night before, they came to my room actually since I didn't qualify and said, young man, would you like to jump tomorrow? I said, well, I didn't qualify. They said, well, the 13th place guy got injured when he was running track, and so you're welcome to jump tomorrow. I said, I'd love to jump. So I gave my mother a call and said, Mom, I get to jump against Carl Lewis, the #1 jumper in the world tomorrow. And she said, that's great, son. I said, Mom, will you pray for me, please? Just ask God to take away my headache. This is honest to God truth. And she said, son, why don't you get off the phone and ask God to take away your headache for me? Because you know you've grown up and you believed in God your whole life. I said, okay, Mom. So I got off the phone and I hit my knees and I said, Lord, if you just take away my headache, I'll jump. All of a sudden, my headache went away. Aspirin came to take away a headache that fast. But the very next day when I'm jumping, guess what I forgot? That I made God a promise. So all day long I'm jumping, and at the end of my last jump, I'm sitting there getting ready to take off, and I was thinking to myself, you know what, Vance? You lied to God because you made a promise that you were going to jump for him, and you didn't even jump for him one time. And so I decided to back up and try harder this time because I wanted to keep my promise. And so my last jump, I backed up about 12 inches, and the board is 12 inches long. But when I get down to the board, guess how far behind the board I am? 12 inches, plus the board is 12 inches. And if you guys have a cell phone, I want you to Google this. I'm 24 inches behind on my jump place, but I jump anyway. And I'm up in the air, and I'm in last place, but I'm looking around at everybody, and I'm not coming down. And when I landed, and if you guys have a cell phone, I want you to Google who won the NCAA championships, beat the #1 long jumper in the world when he was a freshman in college. I did. And so you know, guys, that was not me, that was God's doing. Because how if I'm already in last place all the way to my last jump, and I'm this far behind the board on my last jump, that I end up jumping 27 feet, 11 inches, and 3/4. And if you add another 24 inches on there, I jumped over 30 feet probably. And so I'm one of the best athletes in the country. So I come back out to Arizona rather, and I finished my football career because I'm one of the best football players there. I'm making touchdowns, which by the way, guys, I'm in the Hall of Fame here in Arizona. And just last year, because I've been going a number of years, they said, Mr. Johnson, can we put your name up inside the stadium? And so they brought me onto the football field and put my name up inside the stadium. And I'm also in the Hall of Fame here in Arizona. So I'll fast forward to my NFL career. So when I have a chance now to get drafted, they told me, you're too small to play running back in the NFL. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? So they took me to the scouting combine up in Phoenix, Arizona. And they told me, well, maybe you can play wide receiver, so you can ask Randall Cunningham, who's a quarterback, he's your age, to throw you the ball. And there was a wide receiver by the name of Jerry Rice that I actually said, you know what? I don't want to race against Jerry Rice or run against Jerry Rice or follow him because he's the best one. I'm going to look really bad. And Randall said, Vance, follow Jerry Rice and catch every pass, and the NFL will look at you and maybe draft you. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And that's the very thing I did. I didn't drop one pass. And then they told me, now I want you to go ahead and race Jerry Rice in the 40 meters. And so I raced Jerry Rice in the 40 meters. And I ended up beating Jerry Rice. And so I ended up being drafted what would be the first round now. But back then I was the second pick in the second round by the Denver Broncos. So when I get drafted by the Denver Broncos, and just like I told you guys, I was never going to be an alcoholic. I was never going to be abusive. I was never going to do anything that my dad did growing up. But watch where this is headed. In fact, did I leave my football over there? Can you bring my football over? I can still catch. Yeah. So in fact, I just got this call, let's see, 2020, I think it was. The Denver Broncos gave me this because I was named in the top 100 out of the 3,000 ball players. I was named in the top 100. So the reason why I brought this football up is for a purpose. So my first time playing in the NFL, we played against any San Francisco 49er fans in here? Because you guys are gonna love this. I tell everyone, stay loyal to your team. Because just because I was Denver Bronco doesn't mean I was the best team in the NFL. But if you're a San Francisco 49er fan, you're gonna love what I'm about to tell you. So I used to be able to, I'm just gonna do it. I used to be able to catch a ball with my eyes shut. I just did it again. So we played against the 49ers the last preseason game, and I ended up actually doing a punt return. And so they said, Vance, just stand on the 10-yard line. It's the last play of the game because the Broncos are winning. And so I said, okay, maybe I can just catch the ball with my eyes shut and I'll be on the front page. So when the ball comes down, guess what happens? I fumbled. And you guys won, whoever the San Francisco 49er fans won. Because the ball rolled in the end zone and San Francisco won. And my teammates were screaming and cussing me out on the sideline. And so on the way home, my coach said, Vance, you're probably going to get cut because your teammates don't want to play with someone who made us lose the game. And when we got back, my mind, guys, especially because of the mental illness that I even dealt with, like I told you guys when I was a kid, because of the trauma I grew up around my domestic violence dad, I started having a lot of trauma in my mind again. And so I told myself, you know what, I don't want to go back to Arizona, and if I do, I'm probably going to kill myself. So I decided to stop by a liquor store and have a drink. And I had my first drink when I was in my early 20s for the first time ever. And then I started smoking weed, and I ended up not getting cut by the Broncos. So I became a drug addict and an alcoholic on day one. And they would make me come up to the games early so they could detox me before the games. And they would even take me inside the bathrooms because I had to urinate inside of a cup to see what kind of drugs and alcohol were inside of me. So what you guys saw in those highlights, what was happening behind the scenes, guys, I really struggled. And I'm going to tell you how it got even worse. Because the only time I was happy is when I was on the football field. And don't get me wrong, some sports are in fact, all sports are good. And there are some goodness for us so we can just stay healthy with our bodies. But behind the scenes, if people don't really know what's going on, then literally the things you're going through in life, you might end up even committing suicide. Because I know people even today, in fact, I got a text message on the way up here that a young man ended up killing himself, and somebody asked me to give that family member a call. Coming up here just this morning, I got a call from somebody, a text from someone, and I told them after I get done speaking today, I'll give them a call, because they lost 3 of their kids by suicide. And so I'm just going to beg the kids right now to just have love in your heart, and even though you have those thoughts in your mind, do not trust those thoughts. And I'm sure that you're going to have some different therapists maybe that you guys can talk to. And so be really open and transparent, because guys, when I was your age, you know, I ended up lying and not telling the truth to anybody because I didn't want people to know what was really happening in my life. But I'm going to ask you guys right now to please tell your coaches and your teachers and your therapists what you're really going through, because otherwise things are going to get worse and worse in your life. So I'm back down to the NFL. I ended up actually getting another young lady pregnant, and so I decided to marry her because I didn't want to keep doing what I did to my kids who I abandoned. And I had found out that my kids in Arizona were being not only beat by their moms, husbands, and boyfriends, but they were being sexually molested. So I'm hating myself as a father. And like I said, what you guys saw in the highlights, it was not what was happening behind the scenes. So I decided that young lady that I ended up getting pregnant again to marry her. And so she left town because she was going to go and have an abortion in Houston, Texas, and I asked her not to kill the baby. So we flew out to Las Vegas to get married, and I ended up losing $86,000 gambling just that afternoon, that evening. But we ended up getting married the next morning. And so we go back to Colorado, and I'm going to try to be a better father. I'm going to try to be a good husband. And I found out later on, guys, after my son was born, and even though I was trying to be a good dad, I was still a drug addict and an alcoholic. And even though I was good on the football field, I was the worst father in the world off the field. And I found out that my wife actually was cheating on me with my teammates. And I got really angry at her. And I'm gonna be really honest with you guys. I got so drunk and so high, I already had domestic violence charges against me because I didn't know how to treat a woman growing up. And I had lawsuits against me from her. I went home that day and I was high. And I was punching my wife and I was beating her up just like my dad did to my mom when I was a kid. And I ended up throwing my wife across the bed, and she hit her head against the closet door, and my wife was laying on the ground and she's dead. I killed my wife. And I ran over and I'm trying to blow oxygen in her mouth. and I'm trying to push on her chest and she's not breathing. And I pick her body up because I know I'm getting ready to go to prison, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put my wife's body at. And guys, I need to just be honest with you. What you saw, the highlights, and what you heard about me when this first started, many pro athletes, we love for people to be so happy and joyful about who we are, how famous we are, but what we're doing behind the scenes, you guys need to know that this is the truth. Most of us are struggling behind the scenes. So I ended up taking my wife into the bathroom, and I stuck her head down in the toilet, and she started to breathe. And so now here I am, don't have to go to prison because she's alive now, and I ended up leaving, but I cheated on her with another girl, and I brought her back to my house in the middle of the night and told my wife and my son to get out of my house. This is how bad I was when I was playing in the NFL. As time goes on, I ended up actually having 3 women pregnant at the same time during my career. I had another woman that I was cheating on my second wife with pregnant, and I also had another man's wife who I cheated on pregnant. And guess when I met that young man that was born out of the other woman who was married to another man at a Denver Bronco football game. I wish they would show that in the highlights, because at the game, this guy was holding his baby over top of the fence, and he was screaming, cussing me out during the game, and saying, "Vance Johnson, this is your mother effing kid." And I looked back at that kid in his eyes, and he looked just like me. But my coach made me go in the field, and I found out years later that that young man was not only being beat on by the guy that thought he was a dad, but he also was being sexually molested by his grandfather. Guys, what kind of father am I? You guys already saw what I did to my 2 kids that I already left in Arizona, and now this is what I did to my kids even in Colorado. I ended up actually abandoning all of my kids. So I'm gonna fast forward. Guess how many times I was married? 7 times. 7 marriages. And this was the biggest sin that I was committing in my life, and that's the reason why I wanted to even apologize to you young ladies, because a man is supposed to make his wife, especially even that young lady that he's going to grow up to marry one day, you young men, if you plan on marrying her, you need to make her more important than yourself. But because I didn't grow up knowing how to do that as a young man, I didn't do it when I became an adult. So having my 7th wife now, I move up in the foothills because I decided to leave the NFL because of my suicidal attempts even on myself when I was playing in the NFL and playing 10 years and 3 Super Bowls, but really struggling behind the scenes. I move up into the foothills with my 7th wife, but I lied to her and didn't tell her that I was married 6 times before her. So she's with me, and we opened a restaurant up called Vance Johnson's Outlaw Ribs, and so I'm this famous guy up here, getting caught, getting put in jail, racing my cars, getting pulled over all the time, and so many bad things were happening to me, even as a Bronco and now even after my career, that I decided, you know what, I'm still having a lot of suicidal thoughts. One of my sons said, he called me and said, "Dad, can I come up and live by you and go to college because you're my dad?" I said, "You know what, son, I've been a horrible father to all of your siblings, so why don't you come on up?" So he came up to live with me, and then he got an apartment because he was going to college. And my son called me one day and said, "Dad, can you do me a favor? Take me to go see Mom because my grandfather just died and I want to go see my mom." And I said, "Son, yeah, give me a call later on and I promise you I'll take you down to see your mom." So my son calls me that afternoon and I'm looking at the cell phone ring, but because I'm with another prostitute that I shouldn't have been with, I didn't pick up the phone. And guys, if you can just go to this next video, I want to share with you what happened to my son the very night that I didn't pick up the call he called me.
His life was spiraling out of control, and in 2007, a phone call sent him over the edge.
It was about 10:30 in the morning, and my first wife called me, and she said, "Our son is dead." And I was behind the bar in the restaurant, and I said, "What?" She said, "Vaughn is dead. A drunk driver ran a stop sign and killed him." And so I picked up this bottle of Patrol and I just started drinking.
So my son got killed that very night that he asked me to give him a ride. And if I was a good dad, I would have given my son a ride. But because I was that bad father, I didn't pick up the phone, and he got ran over by a drunk driver. He got killed that night. And what I do is I blame myself for it because I should have taken him over there. As time went on, I'm struggling so much, guys, emotionally, that I started hating myself. And just like I told you, when I was your age, that I planned on killing myself. So this is what I planned on doing this very night, is kill myself. I called my mother. They had to come up to Colorado to take over my restaurant. And my dad ended up actually coming up with her too. And they said, "Vance, you know what? we got to help you. And I said, I'm going to die. And my mother took me to the hospital. And this is what happened to me the very night that my mom took me to the hospital. If you'll show that next video.
And literally for 2 years, I used myself into a coma. It was probably the lowest of my life.
If you could put the photo up, I'm not sure if you guys can see it because of the light. But I OD'd at the doorstep because of the drugs and alcohol that I was taking at the hospital. And they had to induce me into a coma. I literally was in a 28-day coma. And on day 24 of my 28-day coma, they actually propped me up and told my family to please fly out and say goodbye to Vance because Vance's body shut down and he's going to die. My mother told the doctor, God is not done with my son. And they laughed at my mom because they said, ma'am, this is our position, this is what we do. And normally when someone's in a coma for this long, especially on this day now, his body is shut down. Well, on day 28, my eyes opened up. And I asked my mother and the doctors if my ex-wife came to see me. 2 of my ex-wives came to see me out of the 7. And they said, Vance, those 2 ex-wives out of your 7 came to see you, but what do you mean you were in a coma? Your body was dead. And I said, did a pastor so-and-so pray over me and another pastor pray over me? And they told me, yes, those 2 exact pastors who you've never met prayed over you. And that's when I started to realize years later, guys, that the very life that you live in your flesh is temporary. There is a spirit inside of each one of you. And that's the reason why when I ended up leaving that hospital, and I tried to stay clean by going to a couple different programs, but I started struggling again more and more. And I was driving through a canyon one day and just screaming and crying out to God to save me because I knew I was going to die that day too. Then I heard a voice inside of my head, then my phone rang, and it was the NFL. And so the NFL said, Mr. Johnson, we talked to your wife. I said, what are you talking about? We haven't been together for 11 months, we're going through a divorce. They said, yes, but she's a godly woman, and she said God put it on her heart that you might be struggling and you need some help. I said, I do need help, but I'm $1 million in debt. I was $1 million in debt. And they said, well, we'll pay for you to go to treatment. So they flew me out to Florida to go to treatment, where there were another 8 or 9 NFL ball players, and there was over 450 other clients there. But because I was that famous athlete, I only hung around the NFL ball players, and I wouldn't hang around everybody else. So when they all left, I decided to leave on day 13. And I went outside, and I was just going to climb the fence and get my mom to give me an airplane ticket. And guys, this is the honest to God truth. I heard a voice inside of my head that said, go back in. And I said, well, I don't talk to myself like that. And I was looking around, and I didn't see anything. And this is where my testimony gets very deep. I looked across the street, and there was a church across the street with a cross on top of it. And I said, that must have been Jesus Christ telling me to go back in. So I went back in. And they actually ended up having me sit down with everybody else who was struggling with their addictions. And I started listening to everybody's testimony. And I started to hear my story. And I was like, I went through that. I went through that. So every single person that talked, I noticed that. You know, Vance, you know better than them. And then I started to realize something. You think as an athlete that somehow when you get to the top, being one of the best in the country, that when you get to the top, you're going to be the best. And it's like climbing to the top of the ladder. When you get to the top thinking I finally made it, the only place to go is where? Down. And pro athletes, guys, and because I know what's happening behind the scenes, which by the way, a ton of NFL ball players commit suicide. We don't climb back down the ladder, we jump off head first. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. And so the very promise I made God when I was there at that treatment program is that all I want to do now is offer hope and help and talk to the youth and lead everybody into treatment that are suffering with different types of mental illness and different types of addictions. And this was the very promise that I made God. And I got to share this with you as well. I ended up opening the Bible, and I'll open up a scripture that said, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end leads to death. And that's exactly where I ended up at in my deathbed. But God had a plan for me, just like my mom told the doctor. And then there's also other scripture that says, although you suffer in the flesh, you can learn obedience through the things you have to suffer through and go through in life. And that's why for the rest of my life, all I want to do is just offer the hope and the help. And I've lowered myself to the point where I would rather be lower than higher because I care more about you than I care about the old self. And being a new creation now in God, the promise I made him was I want to go back out to Arizona so that I can share my testimony. And you know what's really the most amazing thing? I used to come down here when I was a kid, when I was your age, I would come down here with my mother and father, and I had not been down here since. But God had a plan for me to come down here to talk to his kids. You are God's kids, guys. And that's the reason why he sent me down here to share with you the hope. So I know you guys are going to end up going through what you're going through even to this point right now. And I really would ask you to just talk to your coaches and your mom if you don't have a dad in your life, or to your dad if you don't have a mom in your life, and just tell them what you're going through and ask them if they can be a better parent. And the other thing you can do is be really honest to each other, so you can have your friends next to you that maybe can help you deal with the things that you're going through, because maybe they can offer to talk to one of your teachers or one of your coaches to let them know that my friend so-and-so is going through this and you need to help them out. So with that, guys, I'd love to open this up for any questions if you guys might have any. Thanks for letting me be transparent. And again, I know I came up here as that former professional famous person, but it's not about being famous, guys, because the life you live in is very, very low. I mean, you might live up to 100, maybe 100 plus years old, but a lot of my family members on my mom's side, in fact, my mother's the only one alive, she's 78, but they all died in their 20s and 30s, and my mother's the only one alive in her family. And so I just give God praise that He had a reason for me to live this old. So if you guys have any questions, I'm willing to answer. Yes, sir.
Can I have an autograph?
Can you have an autograph? I'd love to give you an autograph. Yes. In fact, whatever you got, I'll sign it for free, okay? Yes. You know what, let me say this real quick, guys. You know what I'll go do? I'll go back and buy some 8x10 autographs in Tucson, Arizona, me being a Denver Bronco, and I'll go and I'll buy myself 100 of them. But I'm willing to put whoever's name on it that you guys want for free and send it back down here to you guys, okay? So please let me know. All right, so if you guys can give the names to whoever you need to give it to, and I'll send all those autographs back down to the kids. And I'll do that for free. Okay, guys? Yes, sir. You're a wide receiver? Come up for a second. I'll show you guys something.
Isaac, you're lucky bird, Isaac.
So remember, guys, Randall Cunningham told me I had to race against Jerry Rice, right? So guess who he has to race against? Vance Johnson. We're gonna run down there. Ready? Tell me when you're ready. Oh! Look who won! Let's give him a clap. And by the way, he is fast. I was watching him. So what, you run the 40 meters yet? What's that?
I play track and I play football. We play for a little, and then we start the football, and we run a whole lap around the football, around the whole football court, and me and my brothers do it too.
You guys really?
Well,
You guys do
we play for the Cardinals. Yeah.
What's that?
Play for the Cardinals, the mini Cardinals.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. I'm just so blessed to be around you guys. You are really fast. How old are you guys?
9,
Guess how old I was when I started playing? 8, 9 years old.
8, 9, 11.
8, 9, 11. That's great. Well, you know what, guys? I look forward to seeing you guys on TV one day. Can I get your autograph when you make it to the NFL?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, wait a second. I might be in heaven by that time. Yes.
What do I tell him? Do you want to see our speed?
What's that?
Our speed?
I would love to see your speed. You guys want to get up here and run? You two, the one to beat me. Let's see if you can beat them.
I'm going to get second because David's faster.
Okay. So this will be the line right here. Right here. What's that? I want you to stop when you get past that lady that's sitting right there. So I'm gonna say on 3. I'm gonna say on 3. 1, 2, 3, go. Wait a second. Whoa. Wait a second. Come back. Let's try it again. This time I'm just gonna say go. All right. So line up. Go. So whoever recorded that, make sure you get it to me so I can post that on my social media. Okay? What do you guys? You know what? They reminded me of who I was when I was their age. Thank you so much for that. Any more questions? Well, it's really an honor coming out here and just spending time with you guys. And by the way, I forgot to tell you guys this. I've apologized to all of my kids. And those 2 kids that I told you that I abandoned in Tucson, Arizona, who were sexually molested by their mothers, boyfriends, and husbands, My son actually, a few years ago, actually called me because he was getting ready to go to jail because he was homeless, he was stealing things. And so I talked to the courts and they said, Mr. Johnson, because you represented your son and you told us his history, if you get him into long-term care, we won't put him in jail. And just this Christmas was the first time that I saw my son and my daughter for the first time since they were babies in their mom's bellies. And so I just give God praise that my kids have forgiven me because I apologize to all of them. And so I just really want to thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys have good dads and good moms because we're supposed to be good mothers and fathers and raise our kids in the way that they should go. So that's it. If you guys want to come take the mic. God bless you guys. Jesus loves you.
Thank you, Vance. We appreciate you sharing your life story with us, and hopefully our kids have some inspiring roles to them. What schools are everybody at? Racker, Carpenter, Rio Rico. Go ahead, you in the blue. Calabasas. Calabasas. So all over the county, we have a wide variety of students here.
God bless you guys. I really appreciate this opportunity to spend time with you guys. Just like I said, I'll say it again, Jesus loves you so much. So keep seeking Jesus Christ, guys.
Thank you, Vance. Thank you. We'd like to now invite our Honorable Judge Emilio Velasquez up to do the closing statements. And then stick around, guys, because after he's done, we'll do a couple of raffles, okay?
He's so cool.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, before we leave, we're just going to close real quick, right? I'm not going to be really long-winded with this. My name is Emilio Velasquez. I'm the Justice of the Peace. And I just want to let you know that we are very, very happy to have had Mr. Johnson here today. And I just want you to know something, is that we hear the message that he has, what he's lived through. And one of the things is that I see the infatuation with the football and the infamousy, right? Being famous, being on television, probably making a lot of money, right? But let's not forget the dark side that was within him. And I just want to let you know, everybody here is really young. And a lot of times what happens is that sometimes you wait until you're an adult to start dealing with issues, right? Issues that start when you're young. And a lot of times that's what leads to the drug addiction and leads to the alcoholism and or anything else. So one message I have for you is, you're young. We all have different things that go on at home, but please make sure that at any moment you feel it's just not right, you need to talk to somebody, right? Especially if you ever have thoughts to hurt yourself, right, or hurt others, it's really important to talk about that. Because everybody has at one point some kind of trauma, but sometimes when we were growing up, nobody was there for us when we were younger. You now have the schools, you now have parents, you now have friends. I think everybody has more awareness now. So it's really important that at any point you feel different and you don't feel it's right, make sure that you reach out, all right? Listen, I see a lot of people in front of me as a judge. I see a lot of people that come in front of me, a lot of defendants. And I know that it's just a lot of things that have happened in their lives. But we're trying to do things to help them now. So please make sure you reach out. Don't live in suffering, right? Because nobody needs to do that. Try to find happiness and make sure you reach out to somebody. Have a great day. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here with us today with a great message.
I know you guys are all anticipating the prizes. We have one short video to share with you. So if we can Judge, can you turn off your mic for now, please? As soon as the video is over, we'll start pulling names for those prizes, okay?